Hi, everybody. My name is Carroll Payne, and I'm the co-chair of the Diversity and Inclusion Working Group with Rachel Rose. I think we'll give it 30 seconds or so and let everybody kind of jump in before we get started. I know that it can take a minute to get into the webinars, so hang tight with us and we'll get started soon. All right. I think that I'm just going to go ahead and get going here. Let's see. So, all right. Welcome, everybody. So here's a quick rundown of what we're going to be talking about today. We have a lot of people joining from lots of different areas of expertise with us today. So I'm in charge of giving you a quick intro to the Diversity and Inclusion Working Group with the Academy Software Foundation. Then we're going to have an awesome panel discussion, which is going to be the bulk of our discussion today. We've got a lot of amazing people. All the people you see on this panel discussion, you'll get to meet them and they'll introduce themselves later, but they've all been key members of our Diversity and Inclusion Working Group since its formation, basically. And we also are joined by a few of our summer learning program mentees, which we're super excited about. At the end of the presentation, Rachel's going to close us out with where we're going next in the Diversity and Inclusion Working Group and how you can get involved. And we're hoping to have time at the end for just a little bit of Q&A if all goes according to plan. So in the beginning, this was a little over a year ago now. June 12th, 2020 is what this blog post is dated. And that's crazy. I can't believe that it's been over a year since we started this working group with the ASWF. Rachel and I were tasked with picking up this mantle and seeing what we could do around the state of diversity and inclusion in open source. We really feel like there's a ton of opportunity in this space because open source, by definition, is open. It should be inclusive of everybody. Everybody is welcome to contribute and get involved. But what we saw was that that's not really the case, that the makeup of most diversity and inclusion or most open source projects, at least in the ASWF and entertainment space, look a lot like the makeup of the companies in our space, which is not so diverse and maybe could be more inclusive. So we have a big mission. We started out with 3 original goals in our charter when we were founded. Diversity in ASWF itself, some guidance for members around diversity and inclusion, and then student education. And we've done a bunch in all of these different sections over the last year, and our panel is going to talk a lot more about them. So with that, I believe I'm going to hand it over to Rachel. Oh, summary so far of some of those initiatives. My bad, one more slide. So a couple of those things that we'll highlight, the panel will talk a lot more about them. The webinar series was our first big initiative that we did. It was 9+ webinars over the space of 4 months or so, where we were doing almost a webinar a week, depending on different, of different topics and things of different careers in our industry. It was really successful. We had hundreds of people attend over all of these different webinars, super successful, lots of engagement from students. It really helped us build our network and get the word out about what our group was trying to do. The second one that we've started is our blog initiative, and that's a really what that really fits into our educating our members goal. The blog is meant to do writing around diversity and inclusion and equity topics relative to media and entertainment space. Doesn't have to be around ASWF. So we've had lots of different blogs, a couple different blogs come out so far, and lots more planned. And then the third one that's in progress right now is the summer learning program, where we have 20 different mentees from all over the world, actually, paired with mentors in the Academy Software Foundation and associated companies who have access to the Gnomon Workshop learning platform, can take classes online there of whatever they're interested in, whatever they'd like to learn more about, and meeting with their mentors on a regular basis to talk about what they want to do in their careers and paths and ideas to get there and resources to help them achieve their goals. So those are the three things we're going on now, and that's all I'm going to talk about at this point. And I will hand it over to Rachel to introduce our first panel.
Awesome. So thank you very much, Carroll. I'm working with someone else named Claire today. So thank you very much, Carroll. I'm Rachel Rose, as Carroll mentioned. I'm Carroll's co-chair for the Academy Software Foundation Diversity and Inclusion Working Group and R&D supervisor at Industrial Light and Magic. So I'm really excited for our panel today. We have a really great lineup of people for you to hear from. We've broken this panel up into 4 mini panels, each consisting of a different type of person who has participated in our working group over the last year. We'll first hear from ASWF leadership, then from working group members from the ASWF member companies, followed by some educators, and then finally some learners who have participated in some of our programs this year. Now, throughout these mini panels, please feel free to enter any of your questions that you have into the Q&A panel at the bottom of the screen. We'll try to weave in questions where it makes sense. And then after the 4 mini panels, we'll do a brief wrap up, and then we'll bring everyone back to the screen for a final Q&A round from you. So definitely, we're really interested in your questions. Please put them into the Q&A box. So let's go ahead and get started. I'd like to welcome Bill Ballew from DreamWorks to the stage. As a member of the ASWF TAC, I'm excited to get Bill's thoughts with respect to ASWF leadership. So hi, Bill. Maybe we can start with you introducing yourself.
Yeah, no, I'd be happy to. So my name is Bill Ballew. Pronouns are he and him, and I am currently the Chief Technology Officer at DreamWorks.
That's fantastic. You know, diversity and inclusion was obviously a really big thing that the Academy Software Foundation decided they wanted to invest in last year. And I'm really interested in your perspective of why diversity and inclusion was such an imperative mission for the Academy Software Foundation and for our industry as a whole.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I mean, there's kind of 2 parts to the answer for that. I mean, one is it's just the right thing to do. Right? You know, we have a community that is an open community. It's an open source community, and we should have representation across the board. But as I think Carroll was saying earlier, you know, when you look at our projects and you look at who's contributing to it, it feels like it's much more closed. It's not. It doesn't feel as open, and it's very kind of homogenous. And you know, we really need to see more representation across the board in those projects. So that's kind of the first part. The second part is it's just good for the industry and it's good for the projects. And the reason for that is that we know when you bring different perspectives into projects, you end up with better results. I mean, it's proven over and over and over again. And we can see that just in the projects that are there to begin with. And the reason why they're so successful is that we've had studios contribute to them. And it's not just one studio, it's many studios and third-party tool providers. And it's that diversity of thought that we've already been able to capture some aspects of into these projects. And you know, studios have gotten rid of their proprietary tools in favor of them because they're best of breed, they're better, they're just the best that's out there. But you know, when we look at the projects, there's still more we can do, and there's still a lot of hard problems to solve. And the best way that we can solve those is by bringing even more thought diversity into those projects. And we have to tap, you know, we're already looking at our resources, and we're strapped for finding people to work on projects. So we have to broaden our view of who comes into it. And the best way to do it is to look at the representation we have and go after people that haven't traditionally been in this industry. And you know, we have to provide that kind of on-ramp for people to get a foothold into it and contribute to it. And I think we'll end up with better solutions and better projects in the end.
I love that so much. You know, I've always thought that one of most amazing things about open source was that it really was about collaboration and, bringing so many new ideas to the table to kind of make things better. So
Exactly.
I'm personally very glad that the Academy of Software Foundation, I recognize this as something that we wanted to put real resources behind. As obviously an organization that's made up of a bunch of member companies, kind of contributing into something that is for the greater good. I wonder, if you have any insight as to how you think, the diversity and inclusion efforts of the Academy of Software Foundation kind of tie in with, your member company and other member companies, interests and desires.
Yeah, there's huge alignment there. I know for DreamWorks, NBCU, Comcast, we're a whole family of companies, and the same thing echoes. It's that this, initiatives around diversity, equity, and inclusion are not just the right thing to do, but they're good for our business. And that's seen at all levels, all the way up to the Comcast CEO, Brian Roberts. And he said it over and over again. And whether it's, we're creating set-top boxes, for cable, or if we're creating TV shows or feature films, or even just internal tools for our artists to be using to make them productive, the best way that we can create those things is to have that thought diversity that I was talking about. And it comes best when you have people from different backgrounds, different ethnicities, from different genders. You have them come in and bring their ideas to it. So, if we look at the content we create at DreamWorks, we want to tell unique stories. We want to tell different stories. We don't want to just keep rehashing the same ones. And by bringing people in with those different perspectives, those different backgrounds, it's just so key. And we can create those new engaging stories that are there. So I think there's huge alignment. Most companies now have an initiative around D&I. And we have a number of people on this working group, at least from DreamWorks side, that are also involved in the leadership on our employee resource groups or in our tech women group and all of those. And it's bringing those leaders into the working group that we can start to share more ideas. So there's still room for more. So I would encourage, other companies that have D&I efforts going on to kind of peel off a few of their leaders that are that can come into our working group and contribute with ideas, share ideas around mentorship, around sponsorship, how we can really kind of move the needle on diversity in the open source community, but then in the industry more at large.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, to that point, we will be sharing some resources at the end of this presentation to help you get involved. So if you're interested, definitely wait till the end of the presentation. We'll share some stuff. Yeah, I'm obviously the diversity and inclusion challenge that we all face is certainly not a simple one to solve, right? We know, again, as you just mentioned, our industry is, and all of our member companies have been really interested in trying to tackle it. And obviously now we're involved, the Academy of Software Foundation, for the last year. So it's not an easy thing to solve, but we all hope we can move the needle with all of our resources. But what do you think, in your opinion, is the most impactful thing that we could be doing, given the Academy of Software Foundation resources, to increase diversity and inclusion and equity in open source?
Yeah. So I'm gonna take a slightly different bent on this and kind of put a little bit of pressure on, I think, all of us that are successful professionals in this industry. And we're all here because at some point in our background, somebody provided us some guidance or some mentorship or something that kind of moved us along. And there's this really great analogy that we had a session with. He's a law professor at UCLA. His name is Jerry Kang, and he had this analogy of actually of bees, and that when you look at the genetic difference between queen bees and drone bees, they're identical. But what makes the difference is that when the larva is being developed, they add royal jelly to those queens, and so the queens are actually made. And it's analogous to all of us, right? At some point in our life, somebody was there, they helped us, they provided that royal jelly to us to kind of move up to the next level. And I think it's a responsibility for all of us to think about as we look at the next group that's coming in that's going to take, some of the responsibility of these projects, or just, at our individual companies, of how do we mentor them, how do we provide that royal jelly, and how do we do it deliberately? How do we do it in such a way that it's not just the people we would normally go to, but it's a broader group of people that we're going to provide that support to? And that support comes in all different ways. I mean, it's opportunities for new projects. It's giving feedback that's critical feedback at the right times. It's face time with the experts. It's ways to kind of stretch your skills by a project that you didn't think you could do, but you have the support for somebody to do it. And it's the ability to fail, right, at times where it doesn't undermine your career and your ability to move forward. So, I would say that that's the most important thing to do, is to really provide that royal jelly out. I'm so thrilled to see that we're doing that. Our mentorship, the summer learning program, is exactly that, right? It's a way that we provide the mentorship and the resources for people to learn more and be able to get that extra bit of support that they need to kind of step it up. And, I've been able to read some of the applications for it, and there's so much just passion for people wanting to break into the industry, but they view it that way. It's, I have to break in. So how do we lower that barrier? How do we provide that royal jelly out to people so that they do have an on-ramp to come into this industry and really contribute?
No, that's super fantastic. I'm now picturing in my head how we can make a new diversity and inclusion working group logo that has a bee in it. I really, I really like this idea. That was really
Exactly.
great.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I'm aware that we're out of time for this mini panel, but thank you so much, Bill. Bill will be back at the end of the presentation, but I'm going to pass it off to Carroll now to take on the next panel.
Yeah, we're doing like a little hop back and forth here and trading off on people, but I get the pleasure of introducing, if I could invite Jen and Barathy and Tracy to the stage, if you will. Happy to see you all. Really excited to be here today. We're going to be talking with all three of you have been involved with the group since the beginning, pretty much, and also are active members of D&I in your respective member companies. So you're already working in the industry. You're doing these things. So we wanted to talk from your angle today about the work that you're doing and the impact that it's having. And so we'll start with Jen, and I'd love for you to introduce yourself and who you are, but you also head up the outreach committee. We saw the presentation earlier today, so we'd love to talk a little bit about the crossover between the outreach committee and the D&I work and your work at Foundry, and sort of how that all ties in together.
Sure. And I'll try and keep it brief because I know we have a lot of speakers. So please feel free to wave at me if I'm talking too much. So my name is Jen Goldfinch. I work at Foundry. Company's based in London. I'm in Montreal. Foundry is a software developer, tools like Nuke, Katana, Mari, Moto, and others. We've been part of the ASWF since it launched way back in 2018, I believe it is. I know, right? And at the beginning, I just sort of, okay, here's this, it was handed to me. I'm the director of industry marketing. So it's kind of a catch-all for anything industry that people aren't sure who should be in charge of something. So ASWF became my remit. And I was like, what is this ASWF? What are we doing here? So I went to a couple of meetings and got the opportunity to be nominated for outreach chair. And the outreach committee at ASWF is basically the marketing arm. It's a volunteer group of member companies. We actually had people from marketing, from HR, sometimes from development. And that our whole goal is to spread the word of ASWF and the amazing work. And part of that includes our inspiring D&I committee. I think, when I think of the work we've been able to do at ASWF, again, with a panel of volunteers, a group of volunteers, everyone contributing, it's just been so fantastic. When Rachel briefly mentioned some of the initiatives that we've done, including the webinar series where we had speakers from all these amazing companies talk about their experience. And our biggest goal in that was just to make sure that the speakers were representative of more diverse backgrounds. We have blogs on the website, which I'll share later, and there's a diversity inclusion tag, and you can take a look at some of the topics that were discussed One of my favorites that mirrored exactly what was happening at Foundry at the same time was the panel that Barathy, who I can see right there, hi, worked on for inclusive language and technology. And to me, this was just such an important topic. And one of my colleagues, who I also can see on is staying up late in London, is on the Zoom. You know, we did something very similar at Foundry. And I think in doing this as part of ASWF, where over 30 member companies are represented across the film and technology industry, to have this kind of initiative come from the member companies, I know it was quite inspiring to our team and my colleague Stefan, who worked on it within Foundry. And, you know, some things just seem so obvious, and then sometimes things don't seem obvious. And if you take a look at the blog about socially charged language, gendered language, ableist language, ageist language, it's just so inspiring, and it makes you think a lot of the terms we throw around. So being part of ASWF empowered our team at Foundry with some ideas that we might not have been, you know, might not have thought of, or were a work in progress, but just helped us push it along. So it's been a great journey, and it's just the beginning.
That's awesome. It's a great tie-in to, I want to go to Barathy next. And if you want to introduce yourself, and you've been fundamental in that blog initiative. You wrote the first one and have been pushing others along, and wanted to ask you why you feel it's an important part of our work in the D&I group.
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, everyone. My name is Barathy Rangarajan. My pronouns are she, her. I'm a software engineer at DreamWorks Animation on the animation rigging tools team. And I'm also one of our co-leads for the Women's Network and for the Tech Women employee resource groups. So the blog, I think that the blog articles are a great way to increase awareness on certain areas basically that can be fixed. We're creating this central resource to educate on these D&I topics and inviting discussion and collaboration in these areas by posting it live online. And I think that by being more open and collaborative on these D&I strategies and getting more companies, getting more contribution by folks across different companies, we're all basically benefiting, right? But also in being open on where we stand with these topics, I think we're also helping to lower the barrier of entry in open source. We're contributing to creating this more inclusive environment where people can feel seen and you know, feel safe to contribute. And I was really, I'm really happy to hear that the article was great for your team, Jen, and that's what basically the purpose of it, like, you know, facilitating these discussions, these conversations, cross communication across companies, and that's why I get so excited to work on this.
That's awesome. It's nice to have that. We didn't plan that, I promise. Jen just teed it up perfectly. I'll go last but not least to Tracy. You're also a longtime member of the working group and a woman in technology. Wanted to talk just about how being a member of this group has impacted you and how it ties over and has meaningful crossover to the work you do at your company.
That's a great question. So I'm Tracy Priest, and my pronouns are she and her. And I am a software engineer at DreamWorks on our core production services team. How has being involved in this working group impacted me? So in so many ways. First, I'm inspired by all of the different people who come together. I mean, we meet monthly, but from different backgrounds of different gender identities, and like have this place to discuss how we can move forward in our diversity and inclusion within open source and within our businesses, and like respectfully, and like it's just really cool to see like everybody come together and have the same passion for diversity and inclusion. But then also like somehow I have found that I have a voice, and that my voice can have an impact for people also coming up. So I have something to say, and the next generation can hear it and maybe be inspired to join in on our efforts as well. sorry, participating in like panels and webinars is never anything that I've ever done in my life. And so I felt very empowered and encouraged to share my story and path with everybody. And then I mean, there's so much crossover between the work we're doing in this working group and any company, whether it's DreamWorks or other studios. When Barathy made that blog post for inclusive language in our code bases, I was working at Blue Sky Studios at the time, and I shared that with my fellow technologists. And there were so many comments about, oh, I never would have thought about that word as being disinclusive. And so, you know, from that and the work that our outreach committee is doing with D&I, like all of those things can transfer over to our own recruiting and outreach programs, right? Like thinking about how and where and who we do outreach to or recruit from, it all ties together, whether part of the ASWF D&I group or our own company's recruiting.
Awesome.
Yes.
That was great. Yeah, that was just perfect. And you're a natural at speaking. And so we hope to see you a lot more in all of these events. Lightning round, we have a minute left. So just with that time now of this group, lightning round of your favorite moment from this last year of the D&I group. And I'll go back to Jen first.
Oh man.
I know, I'm gonna put you on the spot. Actually, if either of you have if Barathy or Tracy have one, feel free to jump in.
I will jump in because I won't be unfair and throw it to someone else. I think the launch of that diversity and inclusion themed webinar series and how everyone came together and jumped in, and we had such a wonderful mix of speakers from DreamWorks and Disney and ILM and Netflix and Epic Games. Like, it was just incredible how quickly it came together and how we had no problem finding speakers, and that was just a beautiful thing. And I encourage everyone to watch the series. There's some great content there.
Cool. Barathy?
Yeah, so for me, one of my favorite things that came out of these blog articles was all the discussions that followed. So like Tracy and Jen were mentioning and such, I had folks as well who were reaching out from different companies, and even folks within the same company who were reaching out and just asking questions. And sometimes their questions would be as simple as, can you explain why blank is considered offensive? And I think that having this open discussion where people can feel free to say, I don't know something, let me ask. I don't know why this term is not okay to use. Let me ask and learn by it. I think that's the very spirit of the D&I work that we're doing. And I think that having these discussions start from an open forum like this, and they kind of give us community ownership, right? And responsibility to grow together in a sense.
Awesome. Last but not least, Tracy.
I think the coolest moment for me was, so after the webinar series, a lot of people messaged me on LinkedIn or other social media outlets. But the cool part was seeing those same people apply for the summer learning program, and then also like participating in once they were accepted. And so it's really cool to see people get intrigued by the webinar series and follow up and participate in the learning series.
That's awesome, and a great segue to our next group of panelists. If you have questions for these three, they'll be back at the end, but I'm going to hand it back over to Rachel.
Awesome. So let's go ahead and talk to some educators next. So we have Cremer from University of Florida joining us now, and Karen Ruggles from DeSales University. Here we are. Awesome. Maybe we can just start by having you each do a very brief introduction. Furby, do you want to start?
Sure. I'm Jennifer Cremer, Furby Cremer, as most of you have ever been introduced to me as. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm a PhD student at the University of Florida.
And Karen.
Hi, everyone. I'm Karen Ruggles. I teach at DeSales University. My kids are in the background, so they also say hello. I put on the noise cancellation, but you know how that goes. So I teach at DeSales University. I also serve as the varsity esports program director there, and I teach in our computer science department for digital arts specifically. And I've been involved with ASWF for the webinar series as well as for the student learning program.
Awesome. So being in academia, I'm really interested in how you both learned about the Diversity and Inclusion Working Group at the Academy Software Foundation and what made you decide to get involved.
Karen, you want to go first?
Sure. Yeah, I think actually Furby and I were in the same SIGGRAPH. I think it was Birds of a Feather that, you can't say, diversity and inclusion and students without me taking the bait. So I definitely dove into that pool and met some great and inspiring people who are here today, even on this panel. And that was about a year ago. So, just being a part of that open community, one thing led to another, and I joined Slack, and then I started coming to the meetings, and it's been a wonderful opportunity. So I do encourage anybody who's listening who thinks like, wow, this seems like a really interesting group to join us and be a part of something that you can change and better for the future.
Yeah, it was. So I ended up starting off kind of like as more of a selfish reason. The whole idea of ASWF and the open source community was something that I really new language here. I really vibed with as far as like how the University of Florida's CS department likes to gear their curriculum is very much supporting the idea of developing open source software, something that already exists that's proprietary, making an open source alternative so that it's more accessible to other people. So I joined just kind of thinking maybe I'll get more into the ASWF projects as more of like a student role type thing. And then the next thing I know, I'm getting an email from Rachel being like, I really like the sound of the way your department works. Would you be interested in kind of liaisoning with us and getting some of the university connections going? And I'm like, I am not qualified for this, but sure. And the next thing you know, I'm helping Karen set up the webinar series. I'm setting up the summer learning program. I'm a team lead for that now. And it just kind of snowballs, and I didn't really expect having like Tracy was saying earlier, I didn't expect to have this voice. And the next thing you know is I'm a very loud member of the group.
And we're really, really happy that you are. I think that's been one of my personal favorite things to watch, is just as the group has grown, just how involved so many people are. So yeah, that's been really fantastic. So how do you feel like increasing diversity in the open source world and media and entertainment can affect the world of education?
So one part of it obviously is going to be that easy kind of checkbox of you're inspiring other people. They see people that look like themselves, that act like themselves in media. They're going to be more inspired to go and become a part of creating that media. On the other hand, is as like especially from the webinar series and making the field in general more accessible and more well known as an option as opposed to your like more standard CS jobs, working for Microsoft, working for Google, the crypto field and stuff like that. You have this whole other very creative field that previously wasn't really tapped as a community to pull them in and see, oh, this is an option. There's something I can do with computer science, I can do with technology that before was kind of just reserved for the more extreme end of the artistic community that you would see in something like the Art Basel festivals and stuff like that.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that there's this field is just ever evolving, and there's so much more that needs to be done in communicating with other people. So, at a liberal arts education institution, I love that. I love the idea that, you have to put a biologist in the same room as a sculptor, and they have to talk, and they have to be able to communicate and to come up with a final end game for whomever that may be, if only expression. So that idea of putting, many different people, whether it's expertise or, their backgrounds, whatever the case may be, that is human. And so that idea of open source technology and that community just really gets me going, and it doesn't take much to poke me, towards that conversation. And I think more practically, kind of to Furby's idea of like selling it, so to speak, like how can we weave this into the education atmosphere, that ecosystem, is to rethink that word internship and mentorship. We are doing that currently with ASWF, with the student learning or the summer learning program. And that's, it doesn't necessarily have to be, this is your person and this is, your learner, and those people have to meet and talk through mentorship. I still have mentors at this stage in my career, and I think that it's really just someone that you trust. So I think sometimes students get confused because they want to put the labels on it. They want to say, I got X internship at Y company, where open source could be just as valuable as an experience. I mean, if you deconstruct why they want an internship, a lot of the time, to Bill's point, it's that on-ramp, how to get into my dream position. So if you're, starting off in open source and you are just doing documentation, and then you're involved for your whole 4 years, that's going to be a lot more impressive on a resume or during an interview than it would be, oh, I had, this internship for one summer where I ran and got coffee, because you're part of that community and it shows growth. So I think that, as educators start to catch on to this idea of community and how growth is not only an opportunity, but it's embedded in how this all works, it's just going to reimagine that education.
I love that. Community's been such an important aspect of everything that we've been talking about when we've been working on the design of these programs. And I know you both have been really important and integral to the planning and execution of the webinar series and the student learning program. Can you share a bit about these initiatives and the impact that you think they're having?
Okay. Right. We decided, yes. So we'll start off with the webinar and just go kind of chronologically. So the webinar, I think like Carroll was explaining at the kind of beginning of all this, it was a way to expose all the different types of jobs within this community and within this field that were available, and to try and clear up some of the industry jargon that kind of causes some of that conflict when people are going for the more traditional internships as far as, okay, what is a technical director? What is a software engineer? And how that changed from company to company. And then also just allowing students and just people in general that were interested in those fields and in those jobs to show up, learn about it, talk kind of almost one-on-one, just the way that the Q&A sessions ended up kind of evolving as the webinars went on, and became really personable. And then having that student, we have a student channel in the Slack that always got really lively right after the webinar, as everyone kind of started joining into the community and at least being involved in keeping on track with what's happening in the discussion, even if they're not contributing like to the project specifically. They could still see like the process of what it looks like to be one of those contributors. Just like for me personally, I'm on the OpenVDB channel. I have yet to contribute because I've yet to find the time, but just seeing that discussion on its own is validating. And I think that was a really big part of the webinar series, was that extra validation and accessibility of we're a big conglomerate and there's little niche parts of it. And to figure that out, just ask questions, experiment and explore, and we'll hear when you're done.
That's awesome. We have about 1 minute left. Karen.
Yeah, I mean, and I think for the student learning program, which kind of grew out of the webinar, we had discussions even, I want to say even in January, about what that program would look like. What does that even mean? When would the time be? All the brass tacks regarding that, but also that idea of the on-ramp and just opportunity. So where do we see that we can make a difference as, you know, a group of volunteers, and how can we attack that? So the webinar, I think for me personally, was a great opportunity to put the information out there, but also analyze what are students asking, or not necessarily students, it could be anybody who's trying to learn more about the industry. So what are some common questions, and then look at those common questions as our our problems to solve. So if that's what every student that we're looking for is having a question on, let's shed light on that, and let's bust that open so that we can provide that on-ramp, back to Bill's point, so that we can add more people. And that's really what this summer learning program is geared towards, is to start this launch of a consistent learning experience that can provide that on-ramp.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Furby and Karen. Again, we will have both of them join us at the end of the presentation, but let's go ahead to the last of our mini panels that Carroll will be talking with some of our learners.
Yeah, I'm so excited to welcome two of our student learning program mentees and participants to the stage, Rebecca and Stella. Also want to say just a huge thank you to Karen and Furby and everybody else, all the participants in this. Like these mentees wouldn't be here without their help. There's no way that we could do this without them. And we're really excited to talk to you two today. So I'm going to start it off, and then with this first, I'm going to just pick on Rebecca first. You've been a participant in both the webinar series and the learning program now. Wondering if you just speak about your experiences thus far. How'd you learn about it? What's been your favorite part? And also a little bit about yourself.
I am a mentee in the summer learning program, and I'm actually transitioning. I've been in tech for 10 to 15 years, so I think that I'm probably unusual in terms of the learning program mentees, but that's been part of the beauty of the program, is that exposure to this intersection of technology and entertainment that I wasn't really aware was there for my level. And it was really just motivational to hear from folks within the industry, and really just great to see all the facets. Like there's folks who just focus on color management, and that was just something that I wasn't exposed to before. And so like my favorite part about it was that there was the main webinar series, which was great, and they were motivational and inspirational, just seeing folks like me. But there were also these segments of the webinars that were down and dirty, like getting into learning about how to get a build of open source software up and running, and that's just really great for demystifying, and some 3D modeling. It was great. That was my favorite part, hands down.
That's awesome. Stella, same question.
Yeah, so I got to the webinars kind of at random. I am so glad that I did because seriously, it changed my year. I was every week just waiting for the next webinar to come. I was really excited to meet everyone who was going to speak, and I think that I realized there are this bunch of fields that you could work in tech and in art that I had no idea of. I'm a bachelor in computer engineering. And for me, it was just like computer science and computer engineering and coding. And it was that. But the webinar series was this amazing eye-opening thing, I guess. And for me, my favorite part is that following up the webinars, we were invited to come to the Slack channel and to participate on the meetings and everything. And I just got hopped on everything that I could grab on, and people might think I'm crazy, but I was just like participating in all of the meetings, and I was just so happy to be among these amazing people. There are engineers in these giants of the industry, and they're like literally face to face, and they're there to help you, and they can talk to you and say, hi, do you need anything? And it's just really, really great. It's amazing.
That's awesome. We're so glad that both of you are participating. And yeah, like Karen said in the chat, these are 2 of our 20 summer learning program mentees this year. And they also have their own secret Slack channel where they, are talking. And I love seeing all of the questions and the great amounts of communication and helping each other that happens on that channel. It's really, really cool to see. I get to sneak on that channel and just like, sort of be there without being there. So that's great. Has anything surprised you thus far about, the webinar series and open source software? What have you, our industry in general, anything surprised either of you?
Yeah, go ahead.
I'll dive in. So I had a couple of surprises. One, this is probably really obvious to everybody else, but not obvious to me as kind of a newcomer, is how much new standards are playing a role in the industry. Like it's all a lot about getting from this, digital to this digital, this file to this file. There's a lot of standardization happening, and I thought that was really interesting. I was also, this kind of plays into what I was saying before, really just surprised to see people like me and to see a lot of diversity. I saw like even neurodiversity happening with the speakers and them talking about that and how that takes a part of what they do professionally. That was really surprising, really fascinating, and very enriching. So I'm just really used to being the only woman in the room for like 15 years. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's really
exhausting. It's exhausting.
So it's really, and I know that this was part of the point of the diversity and inclusion series, but it was still something where I got there and I was like, wow, look at all these amazing people, they're like me. So that was a big thing for me.
It's really great.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think Rebecca got to the point, just seeing, I mean, there were a lot of bunch of different people, but there are a lot of women on the webinar series, and I was so happy to see them, like they're all their path to get to where they are right now, and it was amazing. And I think one of the things that surprised me the most was that the open source community is it's a place where we can actually like develop things as a group and as like different individuals with different kind of perspectives. And I think it's the most amazing place to have a diversity and integration group because we are still planning the standards, right? We are still trying to navigate through this bizarre thing that's still happening in 2021 that we don't know how to fix it, but we're trying to get somehow to fix it. And I think it's just amazing that we can be part of the conversations, even though we are not in the industry. It's really cool.
And that's what we want. We want you all in the industry. We want your voices and we want your contributions. And we really think that was like one of the main goals, right? That was, we recognize that open source has the possibility to be this sort of launching board that doesn't have a barrier to entry of having to live a certain place or look a certain way, or any of these biases that are inherent in a lot of these things, and have the possibility to not exist in open source. They do a little bit, but we're working on that. We think that we can break down some barriers and really do some cool work, and it's awesome to see you guys here. The last question I have for you all is, you're part of the summer learning program right now. What are you looking forward to next?
So for me, the mission has been to scale up. Like, and I've been devouring 3D modeling, procedural, programmatic modeling, and now the next step is to looking at game engines and some C++ with that. My big goal is to contribute to one of the open source libraries, honestly, to one of the repos. So that's like, that's kind of like a month I said, hey, by September this day, I want to have contributed something. And thankfully they're really well organized. So there's a lot of low hanging fruit that I can kind of dive in there and plug in. So that's where I would like to be. So get myself a better candidate role. Go ahead.
Yeah, definitely. I think contributing with the community is one of my main goals right now. I mean, I'm not gonna say like next month because that's too close. But like to the end of the year, you know, like or more. I don't know. I'm planning on staying here like a little while, you know. But yeah, definitely. I one of the things that I've liked learning during the program was that I'm not an artist. I never learned how to draw, and I have no artistic perspective when it comes to imaging or anything. But I am so interested in how the programs works, and how does Houdini work, and how does Nuke work, and how all these softwares, they actually help the artists to produce what they need to do, you know. And I think for me, it's my goal is that to be part of this. Okay, so can I make like a node here that's going to make it easier for the artists to do an explosion or something or anything, you know? But yeah, definitely I want to contribute to the ASWF, and I think, yeah, to the community in general, and to continue to participate in the DNI work group, because I think it's the one that I can actually give some input, you know, like right now.
Yeah,
yeah.
I think too, that's it ties into well to what we're going to go into just quickly to close out. Thank you guys so much. I'm really excited that you're here. I'm going to hand it back over to Rachel, who's going to talk about what is next on our agenda, and it really, the things you guys are saying and your next steps really tie into what's next for our DNI working group in really meaningful, tangible ways. So let me do the share the screen thing so that Rachel has the slides, and
awesome.
There we
so
go.
Yeah, as Carol was just saying, before we pull everyone back to the stage for a final Q&A, we just wanted to take a quick moment to look forward to some of the things that the ASWF Diversity and Inclusion Working Group are planning to do over the coming year. So Carol, I think for some reason the slides turned into a line again. I know it was doing that earlier, but when you can. Continuing towards our goal of diversity within the Academy Software Foundation, we want to fully roll out our Academy Software Foundation Ambassador Program that we began discussing earlier this year, but have yet to actually fulfill. Now, the key idea behind this program is to have a member of the Diversity and Inclusion Working Group regularly participate in and attend meetings for a particular open source project. So looking at all things that are happening within that open source project towards diversity, and with an eye towards diversity and inclusion. Now, this ambassador will be on the lookout for ways to make a project as inviting to people of different backgrounds as possible. They will also help implement D&I initiatives within the project itself, and they will spark new opportunities to push towards our goals, that are based on their own personal observations. Now, in that same vein, this year we would also like to take a closer look at ways to set concrete goals for the organization and ways of measuring success for things like the ambassador program. It's very hard to measure diversity, but we really do want to find ways in which we can know if we are actually having a positive impact. You know, having people tell us what their experiences are is a really great way, but we'd like to see if we can find better ways. So that's going to be also one of our initiatives this year. Now, this year, we also want to continue our mission of providing help and guidance to our member companies. One initiative that we have been discussing is the idea of starting a new open source project that would diverge from the typical open source project, in that instead of code, it would be text that would be outlining an open source diversity and inclusion framework that could be used by other organizations to either add to their existing D&I initiatives or help jumpstart a D&I program within their company. And then finally, towards our goal of educating new communities in open source in our industries, we want to learn from what we have been doing this year with the webinars and the summer learning program, and find ways to continue it and expand them to have an effect on diversity as much as we can within the industry. So our last slide here is one that I promised would be coming, which is how to get involved. So, you know, obviously The open source community is completely open, so we really encourage everyone to join. We have a mailing list that you can join, as well as a lot of sublists for those mailing lists in all kinds of different areas of the Academy Software Foundation that you can be a part of. But in particular, we really encourage you to join us on Slack and join our diversity channel on Slack. It's a fantastic community where we have a lot of great conversations. So with that, we can wrap up and invite everyone else to the screen and have a final Q&A. If you have any last questions, please dump them into the Q&A box down at the bottom. But maybe I can just get us started since we were just talking about the future. I wonder if anyone from the panel, from any part of the panel, has any ideas about where they would like to be pushing the initiatives that the Diversity and Inclusion Working Group are doing. What ideas do you have?
I can chime in here. I know the blog right now we have only a few posts in currently, and I definitely would love to see it grow. And we had a lot of topics, a lot of ideas of where we want to go with this. And what we need is folks who are tuned in today who are interested in taking part to reach out to us and be a part of this process, contribute your ideas, and be a part of the community. So. Yeah, I would like to see the blog grow.
Absolutely, I think that would be huge. Other thoughts?
I think maybe go ahead.
We always talk at the same time. It's beautiful. Yeah, I mean, for me, the student learning or the summer learning program, I would love to see that expand and become sort of self-sufficient. We talked a little bit about how existing SLPs could kind of mentor each other and have that build and grow together. So that's one thing that I'm really interested to learn from this first one and then grow from there.
Okay, so we had like the same thought as well as trying to speak at the same time. I'd love to see, the summer learning program both be like a continuous rollover as far as having our current group be involved in next season, but also just I really hope to see the current group that we have continue to grow together as a community. I know Jen was saying earlier that one of the big things about these projects is the friendships you make along the way to work on them together. And that's one thing I would really, I know we're trying to push forward this like first time around, but like continue that idea and really grow it as well as like from webinar to webinar. Because I know we've talked about doing another season of webinars as well, and maybe bringing sound into it. Continuing the discussion, not just right after the webinars end where it's really lively, but going like from week to week or just however long we decide to span between those webinars, really keeping the conversation going.
I know I'd love to see us grow our community of passionate teachers. Karen's been such an inspiration on how you've integrated this into your program and your classes, and the work that you guys have done has been fantastic. And I would just love to see more schools come on board, join us, encourage their students. It's the awareness, right? It's how do we get that awareness to them and bring it to a wider audience is always a challenge. And it's one thing that the outreach committee is very focused on, is trying to broaden that circle as well.
I second that 100%. Like get in with the universities, expose more students to the possibilities.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I think just to bounce off of that, I think it's also important, I think going way back to the beginning to Bill's point, to also expand that to other locations that aren't necessarily university. And we've talked about this as a group as well. So where can we expand for after school programs for high schools or community college? Because there are a lot of different successful paths to the, the job that all of these students and young people and older people, I mean, there's just so many different paths that lead to success. And, I think rethinking that as a group has been part of how we move forward with, those on-ramps, as Bill was mentioning.
I want to echo that because, looking at non-traditional universities or even non-universities, I think is really important. When we go look for candidates, we often go to the same universities, and I think all the studios do the same thing. And it would be really valuable that, you know, if we have people coming in and contributing to open source in this way, as somebody else said, that's huge on a resume, and that's going to stand out as that gets reviewed in the different studios. And that's a way to kind of break through without having to be at one of the big universities, the big well-known universities.
I'll echo too on just timing in a lot of the last thought is I think so big about the impact this group can have, and you know, we've started, you know, we've grown really quickly over this year. I'm not going to discount everything we've done, but also I'd love to see we've got a couple international SLPs this year, and I think that that's a huge part of growing this program because you know, a lot of us are based in the US or around the US or whatever, but the industry is global. And being able to impact that and bring in people from different areas and different walks of life and different heritage and all of these things is going to make our community stronger and reflect what we put on the screen, hopefully in a more accurate way. And so for me, that's like big long term, but I'd like to see us get there. And I think I just saw us hit 3 o'clock or whatever time it is for you whenever you're turning in. So we've been talking at you for an hour. Like Rachel said, please join us on Slack and at our monthly meetings. We'd love to have new voices always as a part of our community. So we look forward to seeing some new faces. Hope you've enjoyed the panel. Thank you all to all of our amazing panelists for taking time out of your days to talk with us. And we'll see you all soon.